I watched him from the doorway. He was slumped at the kitchen island, the glow of his smartphone painting his face in pale, shifting shades of blue. His thumb moved in a constant, hypnotic scroll. A plate with the crusts of a peanut butter sandwich sat beside him, a monument to a half-hearted lunch. This had become his summer. A cycle of sleeping until noon, gaming late into the night, and this, the endless, silent scroll. My heart ached with a familiar, complicated love. I saw the ghost of the little boy who used to build elaborate Lego fortresses in the living room, his face a mask of fierce concentration. Now, that concentration was reserved for other digital worlds I couldn't access. I'd tried the gentle nudges. Any thoughts on those community college catalogs, Dave? I'd ask. Maybe just a part-time job to get some experience. The responses were always variations of the same theme. A non-committal grunt, I'm looking into it, Mom, or a, yeah, maybe, that evaporated into the air the moment it was spoken. The worry in my gut had grown from a pebble to a boulder. It wasn't laziness, not really. It was a profound stillness, a paralysis I recognized all too well. It was the fear of choosing wrong, of stepping onto a path that would define the rest of your life, and finding it was a dead end. That afternoon, something in me shifted. The boulder of worry finally cracked, and what came out wasn't frustration or anger, but a deep, resonant clarity. I walked into the kitchen, the tile cool under my bare feet. I pulled out the stool next to him and sat down. The sound made him glance up, his eyes briefly meeting mine before flicking back to his screen. David, I said, my voice softer than I expected. Can you look at me for a second? He sighed, the put-upon sigh of a teenager, but he placed the phone face down on the counter. What's up? I took a breath, my gaze steady on his. He had his father's eyes, the same shade of hazel that could look green or brown depending on the light. Right now, they looked tired. David, I began again, my heart hammering against my ribs. I need to tell you something. You are 18, you are an adult. My job, as I saw it, was to get you to this line. To raise you to be kind, responsible, and capable. And I have. You are all those things. He shifted uncomfortably, unsure where this was going. I continued, the words feeling both terrifying and liberating as they left my mouth. I am no longer the manager of your life. From this moment on, you are the CEO of you, Inc. Every decision, every action, every minute you spend, it's all on your ledger now. The rent, the groceries, the roof over your head, those have been my responsibilities. But they don't have to be anymore. You can stay here, in this house, but it will no longer be for free. You will contribute, you will have a plan. Or you can choose a different path. But the choice, from this day forward, is entirely yours. I paused, letting the silence hang between us. It was a heavy, pregnant silence. The training wheels are off, son. Permanently. I saw the words land. It wasn't a shock of anger, but a slow dawning realization that settled in his features. The slight defensiveness in his posture melted away, replaced by a thoughtful, almost sober expression. He looked down at his hands, then around the kitchen, as if seeing it for the first time, not just as his childhood home, but as a physical structure that required money and effort to maintain. He didn't say anything, he just nodded slowly, a single, deliberate dip of his chin. Then he picked up his phone, but he didn't unlock it. He just held it, staring at the black screen as if it were a crystal ball showing him a future he'd been avoiding. Okay, he said finally, his voice quiet but firm. Okay, and nothing has been the same since. The change wasn't dramatic, not at first. There was no slamming of doors, no heated arguments. It was a subtle, seismic shift in the atmosphere of our house. The next morning, David wasn't in bed at noon. I found him at the kitchen table, his laptop open. He was on a job search website, his brow furrowed in concentration. I'm applying for some jobs, he said, without me asking. Figured I should start with that. A week later, he came home from an interview at a local hardware store smelling of sawdust and optimism. He'd gotten the job. His first paycheck, a thin, humble thing, was a source of immense pride for him. He showed it to me, a small smile playing on his lips. First earnings of you, Inc., he said. The CEO analogy stuck. We started having board meetings over dinner. He'd talk about his business, which was his life. He outlined his quarterly goals. One was saving for a car. Another was researching certification programs for IT support, something he'd discovered he had a knack for. He presented me with a proposed rental agreement, a fair amount that covered a portion of the utilities and groceries. He'd calculated it all himself. It was during one of these dinners that he opened up about the fear. It was like, there were too many doors, he said, pushing peas around his plate with his fork. And everyone was telling me to pick one, but what if I picked the wrong one? What if it led nowhere? It was easier to just, not pick. I understood then that my previous approach, the gentle suggestions, the piles of college brochures, had just been more noise, more pressure. By handing him the keys, by making him the ultimate authority, I had taken the pressure off. The stakes were higher, but the ownership was his. The fear of failure was no longer about disappointing me, it was about his own enterprise failing. And that was a fear he was willing to face. He started going to the gym. He bought a used road bike with his saved money and started going on long rides on the weekends. The pale, screen-lit pallor of his skin was replaced by a healthy tan. The lethargy was gone, replaced by a purposeful energy. He was building his body, the physical headquarters of U, Inc. About 3 months after the conversation, he came to me with a new business proposal. "I've been running the numbers," he said, sounding so much like his late grandfather it made my heart squeeze. "The IT certification program I want is 6 months long. It's intensive. If I keep working at the hardware store part-time, I can cover my rent here and the cost of the program, but it'll wipe out my car savings." He laid out a spreadsheet he'd made. Income, expenses, projected savings. It was all there, color-coded and meticulous. "So, I'd like to propose a loan," he said, meeting my gaze with a newfound confidence. "A business loan, from the initial investor, to cover the down payment on a reliable used car. I'll pay it back, with a small interest rate we agree on, over 12 months after I complete the certification." I was speechless. This wasn't my son asking for money. This was a CEO presenting a business plan to a potential investor. He had identified a problem, researched a solution, and crafted a viable financial strategy. We negotiated the terms, the interest rate, the payment schedule, and we shook on it. The formality of it was strange and beautiful. The day he started his certification class, he dressed in a button-down shirt, his hair neatly combed. He looked like a young professional. He looked like a man. He stopped by my home office before he left. "Board meeting tonight?" he asked with a grin. "I'll have a progress report on the new training initiative." I laughed, tears pricking the corners of my eyes. "I'll clear my schedule." The transformation wasn't just in him. It was in me, and in our relationship. The dynamic of anxious mother and passive son had evaporated. We were now two adults coexisting in a shared space, with mutual respect. I stopped worrying, because I saw he was capable of worrying for himself. I stopped nagging, because there was nothing left to nag about. The energy I had spent on micromanaging his potential was now free, and I poured it back into my own life. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since he was a baby. I reconnected with friends. I was no longer just David's mom, I was Sarah again. There were stumbles, of course. A fender bender that set his car repayment plan back a month. A difficult module in his certification course that frustrated him. But he handled them. He came to me not for me to fix them, but for advice, as a seasoned CEO might consult a trusted mentor. We would brainstorm solutions together, but the final decision was always his. The day he passed his certification exam, he came home and whooped so loud the neighbors probably heard. He'd already been applying for jobs, and within 2 weeks, he had an offer for an entry-level IT support position at a local tech company. The salary was more than he'd ever dreamed of making. We went out to a nice dinner to celebrate, and he paid, insisting on it. "This one's on you, Inc., he said, his eyes shining. Last week, he told me he'd been looking at apartments with a friend from his new job. My first, instinctual reaction was a pang of maternal panic. He's leaving the nest. But it was quickly followed by a surge of pure, unadulterated pride. He wasn't being pushed out. He was choosing to fly. He signed the lease yesterday. This weekend, we'll be moving his things into his first real home. His own headquarters. As I pack up his old room, finding forgotten Lego pieces under the bed and old baseball trophies on the shelf, I don't feel sadness. I feel a profound sense of completion. The conversation that started it all feels like a lifetime ago. I had been so afraid that my words would push him away, that they were too harsh, too final. I thought I was risking our relationship. I was wrong. I wasn't pushing him away, I was inviting him in. Inviting him into his own life, as the lead character, the decision maker, the hero of his own story. By letting go of my role as manager, I made space for him to step up as CEO. And he has, in ways that have astonished me every single day. The house will be quieter without him. The kitchen will be cleaner, for sure. But the silence will be a good silence, a peaceful one, filled with the knowledge that my son is out in the world, not as a boy adrift, but as a capable, confident man, firmly at the helm of U, Inc. And I get to have a front row seat, not as his manager, but as his proudest investor and his biggest fan. Nothing has been the same since that day in the kitchen, and for that, I will be forever grateful.